website that
Big 12 Today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8 a to 11 a Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
Big 12 Today here on Big 12 Radio. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the program. It's a stand-on business Wednesday. It's also a little bit of a wheels off or wheels up Wednesday here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. I'm James Westling. Ari's up in Chicago today, and so it's kind of been a musical chairs this week, but we'll be back, the three of us, Ari, myself, T-Chains, as one tomorrow. And through the rest of the work week, he is Taman Turner. What's up, T-Chains?
Yo, yo, yo. I'm in the studio solo, so I'm just chillaxing, relaxing, and watching college football. What a game last night, man. Texas and NC State.
Did you say college football? I think you're watching
Did I say football?
College
basketball.
As a diehard Longhorn fan, I know that you guys have football burnt into your brains, but it's basketball season.
What's funny is I'm not even a Longhorns basketball fan, but it was a great game last night between Texas and NC State.
Now, explain that to me. Taman, I've never understood.
My weirdness in college sports?
Well, just your weirdness, period. But number two, I cannot wrap my mind around being a diehard fan of only my school for one sport. Like I grew up in the state of Kansas. There are a lot of fans that say, I'm a Kansas basketball fan, but a Kansas State football fan. And I've never been able to wrap my mind around that. You're either a fan of the school or you're not. So how can you be a Texas football fan but not a Texas basketball fan?
Fair question. So, like, growing up, I lived in 3 different states. So when I was a kid, I was a Texas fan, a football fan, because that's just, I was born in Texas, and I was like, oh, I'm going to root for the Texas team. That's what I know. So I remember watching them as a kid. But I wasn't really into college basketball. Texas isn't really a big college basketball state. I moved to Connecticut when I was 10 years old, and that's when I started watching basketball like that, like college basketball like that. So UConn was on all the time, so I just started rooting for UConn but never stopped rooting for Texas.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, and then when I went to college at Hofstra, they took away our football team, and our basketball team was, I'm so glad they're in the NCAA tournament, but they were bad for a really, really long time. And, I always say if they make the tournament, I'm going to root for them. I went to games when I was at Hofstra. I called games while I was at Hofstra. So it was like one of those things where I'm going to root for this team, and now they're, in the big dance for the first time in 25 years. So I have multiple teams.
And the fact that you moved when you were, 10 years old, you said?
Yes.
Like that's the age where sports fandom really takes off. I'm seeing that in my household with my 10-year-old stepson. So that totally makes sense. Okay, I have a new perspective. Thank you for enlightening me. I'm posted up at the Wichita Hilton Inn Airport Hotel. I'm in Wichita, Kansas, because I called the NIT first-round matchup last night between Wichita State and Wyoming, and that game does have a indirect tie to the Big 12 because Wichita State won the game. They advanced to the next round of the NIT, where they will play Oklahoma State either Saturday or Sunday. Oklahoma State survived at home against Davidson, withstood 15 threes from the Davidson Wildcats. Christian Coleman had a really big game, and really happy for Steve Lutz and his team as they get win number 20 on the season. But probably the headline would be BYU knows their first-round opponent in the NCAA tournament, and it is Texas, because Texas, with a walk-off buzzer-beating pull-up jumper from Tamon Mack, they survive and advance over NC State. And if you watched that game last night, you might look at NC State and think, well, that guy looks familiar, because Darian Williams was their star. He had 25 points, the former Texas Tech Red Raider. But NC State is out. Texas is in. Did you see the Texas assistant coach who, when that ball goes through the bottom of the net in celebration, runs all the way out onto the floor, ends up in the painted area A lot of people thought that should have actually been a technical foul, but I'm glad that the officials let it go. The guy was just overly excited. He recognized it right away. He's jumping around. By the time his 2 feet land in the lane, he's sprinting back to the bench to get back in his coaching box. But a thriller last night to set the stage for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I'm glad they didn't call a technical foul there. I think it's awesome when you kind of let athletes or coaches in this instance just let them be in the moment, let them have a little fun. It does happen. I get it. You were in the midst of excitement, but no, I think going forward, BYU now knows their fate. They know who they're going to play, and I think that makes things a little bit easier. You can study now. You can, not that they haven't been paying attention. I'm sure they were watching the game last night, but now you can kind of get more in depth on who they're going to play, and obviously AJ DeBonta, Rob Wright, they know that they're going to have a lot in front of them, but at the same time, Kevin Young's going to make sure they're ready. BYU has been very much battle tested this season because of all of their injuries, and I think BYU is going to be ready to go.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to me watching Texas was how much they pound the glass. They out-rebounded NC State 45-33, and they pulled down 15 offensive rebounds that led to a lot of second-chance points. And in a game that 68-66, those extra possessions can really decide it. They didn't shoot the ball well. They shot just 29% from beyond the arc. I think that plays very well into how BYU wants to play. Texas was only 36% from the floor. Their top scorer is Swain on the season, and he really struggled. Only went 2 for 9 from the field, but they still won the game. Texas had a big 9-0 run in the second half. This game was really tight most of the way. Like, Texas led by as many as 8, and then they had a couple of turnovers. NC State had back-to-back threes. That cut it to 2 with just over a minute to go, and then it went right down to the wire. I think the way Texas plays, I think it sets up nicely for BYU. Like, if I was to pick a first-round opponent for BYU, I think Texas is the team that I would choose because analytically they're actually a really good offensive team. Even though they didn't shoot the ball well at all last night, Texas is 18th in the country in offensive efficiency. Where they struggle is on defense. They're 95th defensive efficiency according to KenPom. And just to put that into perspective, we talk a lot here on Big 12 Radio, and Kevin Young talks about BYU and their defense, and that's where they have to get better. Well, BYU's 57th defensively, their defensive rating. So they're about 40 spots better than Texas. My point is that A.J. DeBonta is going to be unguardable in this game. I don't see anybody on Texas's roster that can guard him, especially on this quick of a turnaround where you can't put together a strategic, in-depth game plan to slow him down. He's averaging 25.5 points per game now after what he did in the Big 12 tournament. He was just named the first-team All-American, broke Kevin Durant's tournament record at the Big 12 tournament, which tells me that he's ready to play up on this stage. So I love the matchup for BYU.
Yeah, look, Texas, they got the win yesterday, game winner. But coming into this game, they had lost 5 out of 6. And when they played Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, they didn't look good, like, at all. When it comes to BYU, I know that they have missed Richie Saunders, not only just offensively but defensively as well. But I think this is a good matchup for BYU. Like you said, A.J. DeBonta is going to be unguardable. And I think most importantly, and I alluded to it earlier, BYU has been battle-tested. They know that they have, they struggled coming in to the Big 12 tournament, but I don't think they played bad in the tournament. And, on top of that, I think, Kevin Young's going to have them ready. I don't think that they're afraid of the task at hand. And if A.J. DeBonta is still playing anywhere between 36, 37, 38, 39, and in the last game he played in case 40 minutes, I think Texas is going to have some problems.
Texas is really big. They have a lot of size. But I look at Rob Wright and I look at A.J. DeBonsa, and I think BYU is a dangerous tournament team. I mean, they were a Sweet 16 team last year. I know that they weren't working through the injury issues, but also Kennard Davis is starting to pick it up in terms of his perimeter shooting with Keba Keita and Kadeem Boob and Diakite gave them quality minutes in the Big 12 tournament. That's a team that I think could be a problem. Here's BYU coach Kevin Young on the BYU team attitude as they look ahead to March Madness.
And I think are just relishing the moment. You know, I've talked a lot about how cool March Madness is in terms of my own experience. And I've shared that with the guys a couple weeks ago. It might have been premature, but I was just I wanted them to just understand how cool it could be when you're playing your best ball this time of year, so that you can go into this tournament, which is so unique and so amazing. And I just want them to have such a good experience in it. And I think I know we're playing our best ball at the right time of year.
Like, even though BYU just lost to Houston, number one, they only lost by 7 and had a halftime lead. I thought they just ran out of gas in the second half. Before that, I was super impressed by the way BYU steamrolled West Virginia. I mean, we're talking about a 20-point win against a team that wants to play a slower tempo, a physical, grind-you-out style of basketball team. That was really encouraging to me. So I'm super excited. I think this matchup's going to be really, really favorable for BYU, and I cannot – like A.J. DeBonsa, in the NCAA tournament, every year, this is where the stars are at their best. And I just don't see a scenario where A.J. DeBonsa is getting bounced in his first NCAA tournament game. I think the dude is going to put on a clinic.
Yeah, I mean, when they played Houston in the Big 12 tournament, you mentioned that they led at halftime. Houston played better in the second half, but we all know that Houston's one of the best teams in the country. Texas is not, and I would say going into this game, knowing that Texas is a grinded out, they're big. Houston plays bully ball. They try to grind and beat you down. And that's why I allude once again back to being battle tested. I don't think BYU is going to necessarily be shocked at anything that Texas brings, even if it means kind of, going up against a big physical team. Because if you look at the teams that BYU has played in the Big 12 this season, they've played big physical teams. They've played the Houstons. They've played the Iowa States, who they beat. They've played Arizona, who they only lost by 7 in Arizona. So, I mean, look, I'm with you. I don't think A.J. DeBonsa is going to get bounced in this first round. And I think we talk about I remember Kelvin Sampson said at the Big 12 tournament that A.J. DeBonsa has that clutch gene, that he just has that in him. I cannot see a scenario where A.J. DeBonsa is now playing in a March Madness big dance type of game where he doesn't go off. I expect a very big game from him. Well,
and just to put that, you mentioned Houston, to put their loss into perspective. So last night on ESPNU, I had the Wichita State-Wyoming NIT game, and my analyst is Mark Adams. And Mark is a guy that's been calling games at ESPN for 3 decades. He was a coach in the MAC, is really connected to a lot of coaches in the industry. I always say that everywhere we go, it's like he's running for president. He knows everybody. I'm pretty sure he's the next mayor of Wichita, Kansas. But I asked him on the air because every week he does his Elite Eight. And I'll just say, I think Mark studies the game even more so than the guys that are filling out brackets that are at the head of the company. Mark is just incredibly knowledgeable and takes his job very serious. Nobody works harder. It's super impressive. So he does his Elite Eight, and he's been doing his Elite Eight all year long, like starting back in January. And I asked him on the air, well, who's your Elite Eight now? And he said, I don't have the bracket in front of me, but I can tell you my pick to win the national championship is Houston. He believes Houston is that good. He believes Houston is on a mission, and Houston was his pick. And I bring that up because you noted the BYU-Houston game. And also, I haven't seen anybody picking Houston. Nobody's even got Houston in the Final Four, which I think shapes up beautifully for Kelvin Sampson and this Houston team.
I'm a little shocked that nobody has Houston in the Final Four, considering just their path. I mean, they're going to be playing in their backyard. And I mean that literally. I mean, the Toyota Center is 2 miles away from the Fertitta Center. And I know they have to get there first. And Kelvin Sampson, was pretty adamant. He's not worried about the home court. He said he's been in this tournament for, 20 plus years. You can't take anybody for granted, which I think that's an important mindset to have. But, I mean, Houston, look, we saw them play against Arizona. We know Houston is good enough, and we know Kelvin Sampson's going to have his team ready. If there's anything that I will allude to what Kelvin Sampson talked about all season was the fact that, he mentioned that Kingston Fleming and Kristen Ack are freshmen, right? And that they're young and that they've had to get better over time. Well, if you look at how they played against Arizona, they didn't necessarily play that well in the Big 12 championship game. But I think that was a learning lesson for them in this tournament. And Kelvin Sampson talked about that. And going into this NCAA tournament, they can look at what they just did against Arizona and say, hey, this is an opportunity for us. We can't take it for granted. We have to play well. And, they're going to have, assuming they get to the Sweet 16, they're going to have a nice crowd behind them in their backyard. So I think Houston's definitely a threat. I have them in my Final Four. And I haven't finished my bracket yet, but I feel pretty good about Houston going to the Final Four.
Okay, well, you might have to finish that bracket by the end of this show because I want to hear your Final Four. I think I've got mine dialed in.
Okay.
I've got one who I would consider sleeper team in the Final Four. All right, so time is a flat circle. It's all connected, right? When we talk about Rob Wright, who's going to be playing for BYU. And then yesterday, we see that Baylor has just re-signed Isaac Williams. And I say they don't just re-sign Isaac Williams. They sign him through the end of his college career. This is the Baylor point guard. 2 years, done deal. No portal window, no bidding war. And it's relevant to me because of the Rob Wright situation. This contract is airtight. Isaac Williams is locked in. Rob Wright's contract either wasn't airtight, had some loopholes, or he just didn't care because he left super late in the portal for BYU, left Baylor scrambling. But this is relevant because, number one, Baylor had to overhaul their entire roster. They did not bring back a single player this season from last year. Now they already have Isaac Williams at the point. He's a 6'1 point guard. He averaged about 10.5 points per game, shot almost 50% from three, and he started the year as the backup. And when they put him in their starting lineup, Baylor went 4-5 in the month of February with him starting at the point. They were 2-7 in Big 12 games with him on the bench, so they were much better when he was on the floor, and he himself got a lot better. He's originally from Oklahoma City and played AAU ball with Jacoby Walter, and he was on Trae Young's team, so the pedigree is there. But I think this is key because Baylor is going to be on a mission this offseason to make sure they don't get hosed by like the Rob Wright situation this time last year. And this is announced the day before the NCAA tournament tips off. I think the timing is intentional because it shows that Baylor is going to be building with some roster continuity for next year. Like their season is over and they're getting to business right away. So I like the move.
Yeah, I think this is, good for Baylor. I mean, I think that knowing that the Big 12 is a deep conference and knowing that player roster is in today's era of college basketball is I think continuity is a good thing. So for them to be able to have him throughout his college career, I think that's really good. He averaged 10.5 points this season. I have no complaints about this, and I think for Baylor fans, it was a rough season. Scott Drew's still a head coach. A good head coach. We all know that. But to see some continuity and going into next year for their future, I think if you're a Baylor fan, you got to feel good about that.
And I just added a topic to the rundown that we'll talk about tomorrow because there's been a study and NIL spending across college basketball hit an estimated $932 million for the 2025-26 season. That's up from $314 million in year one of the NIL era in 2021. So we're talking about In the last 3 off seasons, NIL spending for college basketball has more than tripled. In 2025, $400,000 got you a mid-major player who averaged less than 10 points per game on a non-tournament team. Like, the market has gone parabolic. It's insane. And we'll break down that on tomorrow's program. But coming up next, Taman's got the topics and we've got the takes for a little valid or void. Could UCF make a run? Could TCU make a run? We'll break it down coming up next. This is Big 12 Today. We are brought to you by Modelo.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble, and they've gone cold. Miller driving. Dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up. And he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios. I'm posted up at the Hilton Garden Inn, Wichita, Kansas Airport Hotel, where I have overtaken, Taman. Not sure if you can see. I've overtaken the conference room, and I've gone all in with the LED stage lighting. So I might give a TED Talk when we're done here at the end of the program.
I think the blue lights in the background look great. They look incredible.
It's a nice touch, right? So this is like a brand new hotel, and I was in my room, and I could hear my neighbors talking. It's not very well insulated, really high ceilings, so it makes the rooms feel really big. But anyways, I was worried about waking up like all my neighbors this morning. So I went to the front desk, and I said, hey, can I just post up in one of these conference rooms to do my show? And this is a game changer. I think this is going to be the path moving forward.
I'm a fan. I like it. As long as you keep the lights and never, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I'm totally down with it.
You're the man. All right, so we are brought to you by Modelo. And Modelo fan rule number 25, tournament week is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. It's not just a viewing option. It's tournament week. I'm a huge fan of all the tournament games. Like, I don't care. Men's, women's. I'm researching the Richmond Spiders women's basketball for a promo read last night, because they've got a first four game against Nebraska, and they could be an upset. Let me tell you about Maggie Dugan. She's a walking bucket for Richmond, by the way. Men's, women's, NIT, CB, all the stuff. The Crown. If it's a tournament game, I'm here for it. Play-in games, let's go. Rule number 25, tournament week is a lifestyle, not a viewing option. A couple of Big 12 teams still alive in the postseason that aren't in the NCAA tournament. We've got, is it West Virginia that's in the Crown? I think West Virginia's in the Crown. Oklahoma State's in the NIT for the second year in a row and looking to make a run. They'll play Wichita State in their next NIT game. But BYU has their first round NCAA tournament opponent. They will play Texas after Texas walks it off with a buzzer-beating pull-up jumper from Tamon Mack last night. Texas escapes NC State 68-66. So that's their first-round matchup. All right, valid or void, Taman, you have the floor. You've got the topics, and we'll break it down.
Okay, first topic, numero uno. Valid or void, UCF. The Knights will make the Sweet 16.
So we're looking for potential sleeper teams. And when I look at UCF, I actually don't hate it because I love the second-round matchup potentially against your UConn Huskies. I think UConn is the most vulnerable 2 seed because they come from the weakest league of the 2 seeds. The Big East had a really down year. I mean, teams like Creighton and Providence and Georgetown and teams that are traditionally in the mix finished below 500 overall on the season. And St. John's stomped UConn twice this year. So I think the winner of UCLA and UCF can make a deep run. I've filled out way too many brackets, but in several of them I have the winner of that game beating UConn. So I'm going to say void, but I could see a path where it's valid. Like UCLA, my biggest question with their first-round game is UCLA's health because they're playing their best basketball of the season. They've won 6 of their last 8. They've been one of the best teams in the nation over the last month, according to Torvik. They're top 10 in the country. UCLA is to the Big Ten what Cincinnati was to the Big 12, except they're even hotter. Now, UCF ended the season on a 3-game losing streak before the Big 12 tournament, and I thought hung around with Arizona at a pretty high level. I saw a lot of athletes on the floor up in KC. My point is I think UCF is better than maybe I gave them credit for. But historically, 10 seeds only beat 7 seeds 39% of the time, so it's an uphill battle just to get out of that first round. So I'm going to say void.
You know what? I agree with a lot of your points because I like that second-round matchup too. And it's hard for me because, I've liked UConn forever. But, yes, I do believe they look vulnerable this year. I think that they're not very physical. They're not a very physical team. It's weird, the whole thing with St. John's, because they got killed by St. John's at Madison Square Garden. They got killed by St. John's in Queens. They killed St. John's in stores at Gamble Pavilion. So it's very difficult on that front. But I think they have a path here because I think they can beat UCLA, and I think that they could give UConn a run for their money. So I'm going to say it's valid. I could see UCF being a sleeper team. And one of the things, Johnny Dawkins has his teams play hard. They are not a team that really just shies away. And, we've talked about Johnny Dawkins being coach of the year this year in the Big 12. And I know they kind of limped into the Big 12 tournaments. I know they've had some injuries. But I think the path is there. Will they get there? I mean, obviously that remains to be seen. But to see the path, UCLA and then UConn, I say it's valid. I don't think it's outside of the norm. Okay, topic numero dos. TCU will make the Sweet 16. Another sleeper possibility. Valid or void?
Man, I love it. I love it. My only deal, T-Chains, is I think UCF and TCU got terrible draws. They got hosed. And I know it's just you're flipping a coin. We knew that both teams would be seated around where they were. I don't have any problem with their seeding. But I would rather see TCU against like Villanova or Utah State. I hate that they drew Ohio State because Ohio State's one of the hottest teams in the field. Same thing for UCF and UCLA. These first-round matchups are brutal for the Big 12 because these are two teams in UCLA and Ohio State, both from the same league, that were both on the bubble. Ohio State and TCU had the exact same record 20 games into the season, and both got hot. Ohio State's got a guard in Bruce Thornton who's averaging over 20 points per game, most by any Ohio State player since Evan Turner back in 2010. He shoots it from 3, 41% there. He shoots 56% from the floor. The kid is a walking bucket. And his name is Bruce Thornton, by the way, if you're tuning into that game and you're like, who's this Thornton guy who's just going bananas? And then they have a supporting cast. Now, the other thing, I do think that the size problem for TCU could be on display because Ohio State has a pair of 7-footers that they rotate. Christoph Tilley is a 7-footer. Then they've got this Nigerian kid who's 7'1". They both come off the bench, pound the glass. So I don't like the matchup for TCU to get out of the first round. And if they do, they have Duke waiting. I know TCU's hot. I know TCU had a really strong finish, and I'd love to see them make a run. But I just thought they got maybe the toughest draw of anybody in the Big 12. I hate the potential matchups, so I'm going to have to go void.
Okay, for me, I'm voiding it too because I don't think they'll beat Duke in the second round. But let me make an argument for them if I may. TCU's won, the finish season. They finished 9-2, and that includes the Big 12 tournament. They played a Kansas team that you and I were both there for, and basically what is Allen Fieldhouse East, right?
It would be East. You got it.
They played Allen Fieldhouse East, but they came into this tournament red hot. I mean, into the Big 12 tournament red hot. In the NCAA tournament, I still say they are hot. They beat number 10 Texas Tech at the time. They had beaten Iowa State at the time. I see, like, if they were to win, I wouldn't be surprised. But kind of like you said, they've been given a tough draw. Ohio State's not going to be easy, but I do have TCU winning that game. But the problem is I just don't have them beating Duke. I don't see a path where they beat Duke. That's why I'm going to avoid it.
Okay. Yeah, the matchups are just brutal.
Yeah.
We didn't have a ton of time with the bracket, but that was my first thought. I thought TCU got Ohio State. UCF got UCLA. Like, those would have been the top two teams, even in that seed category, that I would have said we want to avoid. All right, speaking of void, what's next?
All right, next one. Darren Peterson will be the #1 overall pick no matter what happens to Kansas in this NCAA tournament. Valid or void?
Void. It's going to be DeBonsa. And if it's not DeBonsa, it might be Boozer. Like, Boozer's climbing the charts. I know that Peterson is a freak, and when he's healthy, he's got MJ/Kobe characteristics, but Shreda, did you have
Shreyas,
Lotta on?
We did yesterday. Yes, he broke down that article very well that he wrote.
Yeah. And, man, he's been putting that together for months.
Yes.
Like, he's been talking to Peterson's camp since way back in November. And
he spoke directly to Darren Peterson.
I mean, nobody knows this kid more than him. What did he have to say? I missed the interview.
I mean, he just talked about he kind of doubled down on the first article that Shreyas put out last week. That that the hospitalizations, the injuries, that was troublesome for him. It was traumatic for him. And NBA, according to anonymous NBA scouts, they have been skeptical because of the injuries, and you can't blame them. I mean, you're going from 32 games, give or take, and plus the NCAA tournament, to 82 games. Can you really commit, $36 million to a guy who, who's 19 years old and has a lot of upside, and tremendously talented, but can you commit that for the long term and being your number one pick? Obviously, there's no doubt we believe he will be a top 5 draft pick. He's going to play 82 games somewhere, but if you're the number one team in the league and you have this deep of a draft, and you have the A.J. DeBontas, you have the Cam Boozers sitting there, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I saw Shreyas in the media room at the Big 12 tournament, and we were talking about the piece that he was putting together. And the biggest thing that stood out to me is he said that Peterson's camp was an absolute nightmare. Like, he has never dealt with anything even close to this level of just so many different people in his business, so many different decision makers when it comes to access that he's ever been around. And so I can only imagine. I think Bill Self has done a phenomenal job dealing with all that, because I cannot imagine what that was like. But also, my other takeaway was, like, these cramps were serious, dude. Like, we're talking about full body cramps, a traumatic experience that put him in the hospital, where he basically
multiple times.
Where he felt paralyzed. It really scared the kid. And so I'm not sure that – I'm with you. I trust that to make him a top number one pick. I think I would take Boozer. I might even take Caleb Wilson. I might even take Kingston Flemings if I'm an NBA general manager, because I don't know that he's going to be able to withstand the grind of an 82-game season. Multiple years stacked on top of one another. And again, DeBonsa, it's almost like he's now the safer pick to be the number one overall pick. But I think what we have undervalued is just how talented he is. Like, he's not just the safer pick. He's a guy who could be a 20-10 guy right away in the NBA. He's going to be a superstar. I think that all this Peterson talk is almost like set DeBonsa and his skill set aside, which is a total whiff on my part.
No, 100% agree. And I'm with you on that. Yeah, I don't think he'll be the number one overall pick, so I'm voiding it for sure.
All right, let's get to one more before the break.
All right, last topic. Arizona and Houston will meet again, but this time for the NCAA championship for the Natty. Valid or void?
Oh, man. So they are on opposite sides of the bracket. You know what I'm going to say, valid. Is it on my official bracket? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think Duke's going to be really difficult for Houston in the Final Four. I do think Houston gets to the Final Four because, number one, I see potential for Florida to be upset even before the Elite Eight. And Houston playing in their backyard, they are extremely motivated. You could look into Emmanuel Sharp's eyes and just see that he is on a mission to redeem himself from last year's championship game. I think he's going to have a huge NCAA tournament. I get a little bit worried about Houston and their depth, and I get a little bit worried about, do they have a guy in the post that can get them a bucket when they have to have it? Last year, that was Juwan Roberts. Like, he took over games this time of year. This year, they're leaning on the freshman Chris Sinak in the post, but he's more of a face-up guy, and if he's off, I think it could be a problem for Houston. But in terms of, stylistically, I think they're poised for a deep run. Kelvin Sampson's teams usually go further than their seed line in the NCAA tournament because of that style of play and how difficult it is to prepare for. So let's do it, T-Chains. I'm here for it. Valid.
Yeah, I think it's valid too. Number one, I told you I didn't have my bracket done yet, but regardless, with my bracket not being done, I have Arizona winning it all. I have been convinced of that pretty much from the minute they started 23-0. And I think for Houston's side, we kind of talked about it earlier. I think Houston has the best path to the Final Four because of they're playing in their backyard. That's number one. And number two, I know they'll have to fly to Indianapolis, and whoever they play, maybe a Duke, maybe a UConn, whoever they, decide to or whoever they get the chance to play. I think that there's still motivation on Houston's side because of what happened last season. And I'm a big Kingston Flemings fan. I'm a big Emmanuel Sharp fan. I think that Houston can totally get there. And, yesterday, James, we talked about the rivalry that's brewing between Arizona and Houston. And what better way for this rivalry to totally expand for them if they play once again for the third time this season, this time for a natty. I'm totally in on it. Totally valid.
Man, that would be so huge for the league. All right, coming up next, it is Power Rankings. We do it each and every Wednesday. Today we're going to Power Rank the top 5 teams in the Big 12 on the men's side based off of their path, their chances, their odds to get to a Final Four. So if we were ranking the 5 teams in the Big 12 based off of who we think can go the furthest, you can look at it team and matchups based. You can look at it who's hot, who's not right now, however you want to do it. Our top 5 teams, Big 12 basketball. Before hour number 2, we will dive into our Modelo Spring Road Trip, touring Big 12 country. You guys touched on which team yesterday? Remind me.
UCF.
UCF. Today, it is Kansas State. The Kansas State Wildcats will be talking with Collin Klein, K-State head coach, at around 8:20 Central Time here on the program. We also have Brian Haney still to come, the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, to break down their first-round matchup against Cal Baptist, who has one of the most electrifying mid-major guards in the country, who's blowing up on social media. This dude is insane. He's got like some Spud Webb to him. He can dunk. He's only about 5'9", but he is big time. All right, Power Rankings are coming up next. He is Taman Turner, filling in for Artie today. I'm James Westling. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began as Pete lays it in. But they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there with the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble, and they've gone cold. Miller driving. Dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up. And he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. We are brought to you by Modelo. It's tournament week, and tournament week is more than just a viewing option. Modelo fan rule number 25, tournament week is a lifestyle, not a viewing option, and it is that. Here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, diving into the Kansas State Wildcats as part of our Modelo spring road trip all around Big 12 country. We highlight a different team each and every day. We had to have a little bit of a pit stop where we paused our series talking college football to highlight the Big 12 men's basketball tournament, but we dive back in yesterday and today, and we highlight the Kansas State Wildcats today. All right, he's Taman Turner filling in for Artie today. Our three-man crew will be back at full strength tomorrow, but for today, Taman and myself, we are power ranking. I call this the Final Four case, all right? We're power ranking the top 5 Big 12 men's basketball teams based off of what we think they could do in the tournament. You could do it based off of just who you think the 5 best teams are. You could do it matchup-based, but Taman, let's dive in. Why don't you do the big voice and just do your thing?
Number 5.
There it is.
Okay, number 5 for me, and I kind of mentioned this in Valid or Void, is actually UCF. And the reason why I have UCF is because I kind of like their path. Now, I know some people might ask, why do you like their path? They're in the Eastern bracket, and that can be very difficult. Well, I think for 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't trust UConn, and that's are my Huskies. I don't trust them this year. Now, UConn has fooled me before. I didn't trust them when they were the 4 seed when they won. I didn't trust them when they were the 8 seed and they won. But this year, I don't trust them. And I know they have to play UCLA first. But I go back, and I've been using this term for pretty much every Big 12 team, and I think it's pretty accurate. It's called battle-tested. UCF has been battle-tested all year. Nobody believed in them at the beginning of the season. Johnny Dawkins had them playing hard. Nobody believed in them when they played Kansas, when they beat Kansas. Nobody believed in them going into the Big 12 tournament. And I know they didn't advance in the Big 12 tournament, but every year we have a college Cinderella story. And I'm a big fan of Themis Folks. You know who else is a big fan of Themis Folks? Kelvin Sampson. He like glamored over them when Houston played UCF. But I honestly think UCF can make the Sweet 16. And I don't know if they will, of course, but I think that path is there. And then once they reach the Sweet 16, I think the sky is the limit. They'll be playing freely. It's theirs to win. It's theirs to lose. So my number 5 is UCF based on path, and I won't be surprised if that happens.
Okay, I love it. All right, number 5 for me, this is where I put Texas Tech. Texas Tech is 4-3 this year against top 10 opponents. They're 3-1 against top 5 opponents. They've beaten the best, and some of that was without JT Toppin. I look at Christian Anderson. Guards are usually a huge story in the NCAA tournament. He set Texas Tech's single-season assist record. He leads the Big 12 with almost 8 dimes per game. He averages 19 points. He's healthy. Donovan Atwell enters the NCAA tournament second nationally in made threes. He's also averaging 18 points per game since JT Toppin went down. So there's your backcourt firepower right there. And then Texas Tech has been to an Elite Eight in 2018. Final championship game in 2019. Sweet 16 in 2022, and then Elite 8 again last year. Like the program under McCaslin and even guys before him, they know what it takes to go deep. I think they're hungry. I think they know that a lot of people are picking Akron as that 12-5 sleeper game. But I think Texas Tech has a chance to go really deep in this tournament. I've got Texas Tech at number 5.
Number 4. Number 4 for me, I have Kansas. And I know Ari might disagree with that because I know he said yesterday he has them losing to St. John's in the second round, and I think that would be a very engaging matchup. But listen, I am not going to doubt the brilliance that is the Hall of Famer and head coach Bill Self. Listen, Kansas, Bill Self's done a phenomenal job at coaching this season with the Darren Peterson in and out, kind of coaching 2 different teams at the same time. But I feel like if there's anybody who can get this done, it would be Bill Self. Now, I know Rick Pitino has turned things around at St. John's, and I give them a lot of credit for that. But listen, and since the 2000s, when Bill Self has been to a Final Four in every decade, 2008, 2012, they won the championship in 2022. I mean, I'm not Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas gets hot. Now, I know that they've had their down periods this year. They've been up and down. But I just think that Bill Self is too good of a coach for us to just say once again that he's just going to automatically lose in the first or second round. I just feel like if there's anybody who can get it done, it's his brilliance. And, nothing against Texas Tech, nothing against TCU, but I really like Bill Self as a head coach. And I think that if Kansas is going to advance, it's going to be because of his brilliance.
All right, I love it. I've got BYU at number 4. One word, DeBonsa. He leads the nation in scoring. He just broke Kevin Durant's Big 12 tournament scoring record. He had a 40-burger in the first round, then followed it up with like a quiet 37. That record had stood since 2007. You're talking about the Big 12 Freshman of the Year, a first-team All-American. The stage is set for him to just take over this tournament. I mean, outside of Duke's Cameron Boozer, there hasn't been a better player in this sport this season than DeBonsa, and you could still make a case that he has been the best. BYU, by the way, they've been to the NCAA tournament 33 times. That is the most by any program that has never made a Final Four. I'm not sure this is the year that they get that hot, but I love the fact also that they got sent out west. They don't have to worry about any of that 2 time zone stuff. They didn't get sent east. They got sent west. So I like their path against Gonzaga in the second round because Gonzaga hasn't seen a player like DeBonsa all year long. And Gonzaga's losing to teams like Portland State. I think BYU has a really nice chance to pull that upset.
Number 3. Okay, this was very, very hard for me because I feel like it was a coin flip between Iowa State and Houston. But number 3, I personally have is Iowa State. And I only say that because Houston's literally going to be playing in the South region in Houston. But I think Iowa State is the best team in the Midwest region. I think they're actually better than Michigan. Listen, I think one thing that we're forgetting about, a lot of us think that Arizona is going to win the national title, right? In the Big 12 tournament, Iowa State came a second away from defeating Arizona in the Big 12 tournament, and if it wasn't for Jaden Bradley's game-winning shot. And if we recall the final 3-4 minutes of that game was literally back and forth. It was literally a coin flip. The coin just happened to flip to Arizona's side in that game. Iowa State is amazing. Taman Lipsey has played well. Joshua Jefferson is really good. Milan Momcilovic, I wanted to make sure I pronounced that right, has been phenomenal. He was phenomenal in the final stretch of that game. I have them at number 3, but honestly, if it's number 3 or number 2, I'm totally fine with either one.
Okay. I have Iowa State at number 3 as well. I will say, the big 3 of Momcilovic, Jefferson, and Lipsey, they combined for 48 points per game. That is a big 3 that can take you to a Final Four. And Jay Billis has Iowa State in his Final Four. Now, TJ Otzelberger's led Iowa State to the Sweet 16, but they've never been able to break through. And for me, that's where I have them getting held up because I think Virginia is a very dangerous team in this field. Virginia is actually my sleeper pick to make the Final Four. I do think Iowa State's in the region that could be the most wheels off in terms of upsets, so that could play very nicely into Iowa State's hand. But it's almost like I'll believe it when I see it type thing that I have going on with Iowa State. Something is blocking me from putting them in the Final Four, but I do have Iowa State at number 3 as well.
And I just want to mention real quick, too, for Iowa State is that I know they're in their backyard as well, kind of with Chicago. But if Virginia plays Iowa State, just keep that in mind. There's going to be a lot of Iowa State fans there.
That's a good point.
Number 2. Okay, number 2 for me is Houston. Obviously, they just competed for a Big 12 tournament title against Arizona. They're playing in their backyard. I keep mentioning that. Chris Senack, Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp. I'm a big fan of this Houston team. They play bully ball. They play bully ball. They beat you down. They wear you down. And I know there have been moments this year where you're wondering where their offenses come from when they go in stretches and relying on freshmen. But at the same time, there are also stretches you can make the argument and just say that Houston just beats you down. It's like, how do you score against this team? They're so physical. They're a beating horse. I don't even know if that's a term, but it just sounds good. But I think Houston is really in a prime position to get to the Final Four, and I think they're going to do it. So that's me, Houston number 2.
Yeah, I've got Houston number 2 as well. They're top 5 in Ken Palm's efficiency rankings. They are a legitimate title contender. We know by now they're not a pretender in any way, shape, or form. They're top 15 in offensive and defensive efficiencies, which means they're in that really select group of teams that could win a national championship. They're also 3rd in the country in turnover rate. They just don't turn the ball over. I've got Houston at number 2 as well, which means
number 1. Number 1 for me, I wonder who it could be. It's the Arizona Wildcats. And my reasoning for the Arizona Wildcats being number 1, think about it. The AP All-American teams were just released, right? And nobody from Arizona made the AP All-American teams. This is how good this team is. They didn't even make it. None of their players made it. But they're still the number 1 team. They just won the Big 12 tournament. Tommy Lloyd is clearly the coach of the year, based on that notion alone. And Jaden Bradley's been phenomenal. Braden Burris has been phenomenal. Koa Pete's been phenomenal. Delorso's been phenomenal. I think this team is deep. I think they're physical. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. I think that Arizona has been the best team in the country all year. I think they should have been the number 1 overall seed, on top of them being the number 1 in my power ranking. But I honestly think that Arizona, one thing I love about them the most is, and Corey Williams alluded to this earlier this week, is that they don't care who gets the shine. Sure, Jaden Bradley, he's the player of the year, but they don't look at it as that. They are a total team from start to finish, and this is my last but most important point. I think they're hungry. They know the noise. They know about their Sweet 16 or their failing appearances in the NCAA tournament. They know what their fan base wants back home. I think this Arizona team is the best team in the country, and I think at the end of the day, they will be national champions.
Yeah, I'm with you. In fact, they are minus 105 odds to make the Final Four. They are essentially favored to make the Final Four. 8 different players have led them in scoring this year. They've got 7 guys that have scored 20 or more in a game this season. It's been 25 years since the Wildcats made the Final Four. If an Arizona team's going to break that drought, this looks like the one to do it. I'm with you. Arizona's my pick to win the whole thing. All right, coming up next, we are diving into our Modelo spring road trip touring Big 12 country as we highlight the Kansas State Wildcats. Coming up next, he's Taman. I'm James. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, brought to you by Modelo on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burris going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began, as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble, and they've gone cold. Miller driving, dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burris. He's going to have to put a shot up, and he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Back here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios. T-Chains filling in for Artie. I'm James Westling. We've got Brian Haney, who's joining us later on this hour, about 40 minutes from now, the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks. He's actually with the team. They're getting ready to depart for their NCAA tournament destination, so he's going to be joining us from the airport. All right, Kansas State is the team that we highlight today, part of our college football spring preview Big 12 tour, and Kansas State went 6-6, Taman, last year. That was a pretty, I would say, stunning fall from a program that had won 9 games in each of the previous 3 seasons. They're the only Big 12 program that had won 9 games 3 years in a row. Now they've got a new coach, a new staff, a new identity, but the same quarterback. So I think you could say that this is a program at a little bit of a crossroads, but there's a lot of optimism around Kansas State's Collin Klein. Spent the last several years as the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, learned from some of the best in the business under Bill Snyder and then Mike Elko at Texas A&M. He's brought in Jordan Peterson, an up-and-coming new defensive coordinator who was with him at Texas A&M. The running backs coach is Corey Patterson, who is at Oklahoma State. Wide receivers coach Thad Ward is returning to Manhattan. They've got a new strength and conditioning coach, Jeremy Jacobs, who's completely overhauled the program's physical foundation. They're going to have 15 spring practices between March 26th and April 25th. As of now, Collin Klein has said there won't be a spring game open to fans, but the franchise is quarterback Avery Johnson. On paper, he had his best year last year. You know, he threw for 2,400 yards. He had 18 touchdowns. He only had 6 interceptions, but he only rushed for 296, a major downtick from what he had done the couple of years before. But with Collin Klein and the offensive coordinator who he brings in from Missouri, there are going to be some air raid concepts within this offense. They've brought in a boatload of skill position guys in the portal. I think the offense could be really exciting for Kansas State and look very different with Avery Johnson at the helm.
Yeah, I think let me start off with Collin Klein. I mean, he's new but not new. I mean, obviously he's been with this program technically since 2008. Yes, he did leave to go to Texas A&M, but between his player and being a number of assistants and coordinator, obviously he's completely familiar with this program. He is Kansas State to a degree. And I think that there's a lot of optimism in Manhattan, Kansas, and there should be no disrespect to Chris Kleiman, who retired, but I think that, you know, when you kind of have like a new voice, even though it's not a new voice, but a new voice from the head coaching realm, I think that is obviously poised for optimism. Now, in terms of Avery Johnson, a number of things there. I think it's awesome that he's back. You can make the argument to say that when a coach leaves for whatever reason, in this case it was a retirement, you can make the argument that maybe people expected Avery Johnson to go into the transfer portal. But I think the notion of Collin Klein being there, I think he likes that. But let me ask you this, in terms of production, why do you think Chris Kleiman was maybe a little hesitant to let Avery Johnson use his feet more last season? Because we know he's capable of doing it, but his rushing yards did dip a little bit. Why do you think Kleiman did that? And do we expect do we expect Collin Klein? It's hard with the Kleins and the Kleimans. Do we expect Avery Johnson's rushing yards to dip back up again this season?
Yeah, I think there will be an uptick from what he did last year because, to your point, he barely ran the football at all. And it was a combination of things. Number one, they wanted to keep him healthy. Number two, they were thin at running back once Dylan Edwards went down, and the offensive line dealt with injuries. And so I think it was a combination of a lot of things. Also, Avery Johnson, this will be the first time that he has a familiar face calling plays. And I think that's huge. I mean, Avery Johnson has had a different offensive coordinator every year that he's been at Kansas State. Well, his offensive coordinator the first year he was at Kansas State is now the head coach, Collin Klein. And you could make a case Avery, even though he wasn't the starter until the last couple of games, maybe had his best year, his first year under Collin Klein. So I don't think that's a coincidence. outside of Avery Johnson, I think he has more pieces around him this year. Scott Gleason, the OC who comes over from Missouri, is going to bring, like I said, some of those air raid Missouri concepts. And keep in mind, Missouri also had the SEC's top rusher in Ahmad Hardy last year. So they still very much believe in rushing the football. And that's where I think K-State could be really exciting, because you've got Joe Jackson back at running back, third-team all-conference, led the team in rushing yards and touchdowns. He finished last year on a historic run. And remember, he didn't take over as the starter until a couple of games in. He finished the season with 293 rushing yards at Utah. That was a school record. And then Jerron Tibbs is back at wide receiver. He led the team in catches last year. Defensively, Collin Klein retained 9 starters. Not 9 regular starters, 9 guys that started a game from last year's squad. I think that's where they have the biggest turnover and the more holes to fill is defensively. Like, on paper, the losses hurt. You lose wide receiver Jace Brown, team's leading receiver the last 2 years. He commits to LSU. You lose your edge rusher, Tobias Osunami. He leaves for Indiana. He had a season-ending injury. And that's another thing. A lot of last season centered around a bunch of really untimely injuries. Toby Osunami, who had 8.5 sacks, double-digit TFLs, only played in 6 games because he had a season-ending injury. Austin Romaine dealt with injuries down the stretch. Dylan Edwards had 800 yards across 2 seasons and then barely played after week 1. All 3 running backs have departed outside of Joe Jackson. Ryan Davis has left. So 32 players exited the program in the portal. That's a pretty high number for K-State standards. But it's not necessarily an outrageous number compared to some of the other teams in the country. Like, that roster turnover is actually, I think, a lot lower than most programs. And then the guys that they've brought in, I think, can be immediate plug-and-play guys. They bring in a top 50 corner, the kid Prevard from Virginia, had the lowest passer rating when targeted among all ACC corners last year. They add the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year, the crown jewel of the class, Wendell Gregory from Oklahoma State. They add Mekhi Mason, who was a starter and an All-Conference USA guy at Louisiana Tech at linebacker. And then offensively, you know, I mentioned Joe Jackson, and this kind of circles back to your point about Avery. They've added a bunch of receivers. Joshua Manning from Missouri, who comes over with the offensive coordinator, had almost 400 yards as kind of a slot guy. Then Isaiah Williams is the one kid that Collin Clyde brought with him from College Station on the offensive side of the football. 4-star recruit out of high school. And then in the backfield, they add Jay Harris from Oregon. He was a Division II All-American at Northwest Missouri State and Oregon's leading rusher in the college football playoff. They add Rodney Fields Jr., who averaged over 5 yards per carry at Oklahoma State, where they had no offensive line or passing game whatsoever. So I think there's a lot of optimism around the skill positions at K-State.
Let me ask you this, because I want to talk defensively. Obviously, you mentioned Kansas State's defensive woes and how you would like them to improve this season. You're a Kansas State alumni. You saw that defense last year. Jordan Peterson, their new defensive coordinator, coming along with Collin Klein. How do you see year one with Jordan Peterson as the defensive coordinator?
I think the defense could be really good. It's going to look different, but Jordan Peterson, he was the secondary coach at Kansas when Kansas was churning out NFL talent. Kobe Bryant, Mello Dotson. He developed all of those guys. And Kansas fans will tell you they missed him. When he left Kansas for Texas A&M, it was a crushing blow. He's also an outstanding recruiter and identifies elite talent defensively. Like, KU had found some hidden gems defensively, and Texas A&M really leaned on their defense this past year. He's probably the biggest hire, I would say, for Kansas State as Collin Klein built his staff. But then in the portal, they attacked guys that want to attack the quarterback. With Wendell Gregory, who's the headliner, they added Jacob Oliphant Jr., another transfer from Oklahoma State, who's familiar with Patterson and Gregory. He was a guy that started about half the games for Oklahoma State and was productive. But then Elijah Hill is a transfer from Kennesaw State, one of the most sought-after edge rushers in the country. I mean, everybody wanted this guy. He had an 87.1 Pro Football Focus pass rushing grade, which was among some of the best in the country. He had 9 sacks last year as a true freshman, and he has an NFL body. And then Mekhi Mason is another guy that I brought up, the linebacker. I brought up Prevard, who they add from Virginia. I just think defensively, where they lost some guys, yes, but they've brought in some really, really high-level athletes on that side of the ball.
That's good to know from a defensive perspective. Let me go back to the running game real quick because, going back to about Avery Johnson and why his production dipped, you expect an uptick. You mentioned the running back Joe Jackson. How effective do you think that this running game for Kansas State, assuming both Johnson and Jackson are playing at a high level, how can that do for Kansas State for the Big 12 overall? Can that make them a contender?
I think it could. The issue that I think K-State faces is I look elsewhere around the league, and I just see the Big 12 getting better as a league every year, year over year. Texas Tech is going to be dominant. BYU could be even better. And then I'm really high on Houston and Arizona as taking steps forward. I see Kansas State as kind of in that next tier. I think they could be a top 5 team in the Big 12. The offensive line is where I have some question marks. They lose Sam Hecht, their center, off to the NFL, and his stock is soaring. He was on with Kay Adams yesterday on one of the ESPN shows because teams are just all about this guy. He had a really impressive combine. He's expected to be a first or second round pick at center. He was second team all Big 12. Like, you lose your anchor on the offensive line. Now they do have John Pastore, who's going to be back. George Fitzpatrick is still in the program, who didn't play a single snap last year and was their best offensive lineman. He dealt with a health scare right before the year of the transfer from Ohio State, but he has an NFL body. And then Taylor Portier is going to be back. After that, though, it's a total crapshoot. Like, they're high on Gus Hawkins, who's been in the program. They've brought in some transfers, a kid from Pitt and a kid from San Diego State. But the offensive line, finding 5 guys to play in unison and open holes for those running backs and Avery Johnson is the biggest question mark that I see going into the season. All right, coming up next year on our Big 12 spring road trip touring Big 12 country, it's brought to you by Modelo. We are highlighting the Kansas State Wildcats. Let's talk to the guy at the top, Kansas State head coach Collin Klein, around the corner. We are brought to you by Modelo, exclusively on TuneIn, and you're watching us on Big 12 Studios.
In Kansas City is underway. West Virginia basketball. 2 teams looking for the first points in this game. Provided by Jordan Harrison. Cook trying to get around Miles. Good feed to McCray. Rolls it in for 2. Miles. Defended by Woodley. Miles down the lane. Count it, and 1. Harrison for 2. Jordan Harrison, as Christy talked about right at the top of the telecast.
She usually will take her defender off the bounce and back them down. But right now, maybe this is going to be 2 for him. There you go.
Yeah, great feed by Miles as she finds Parker. Harrison. Count it. It's a 3. Mountaineers dodge one there. TCU had multiple opportunities.
And right now, with this 9-point lead, West Virginia does not need to be in a hurry. They do not even need to look to shoot the shot until about 5 seconds to go.
Inside of 2 minutes to go. Wheeler on the drive. Big B, good shooter. Can't get it. Rebound, McAlusky.
TCU's got a foul.
They don't get anybody. Here's Shaw all alone for the layup. Cue Country Roads. For the first time in 9 years, West Virginia, Big 12 tournament champions.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. You are listening to us exclusively on TuneIn, watching us on Big 12 Studios with Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Part of our spring football series, we head up to Manhattan, Kansas, and talk with new head coach Collin Klein. Hey, Coach, good morning.
How's everybody doing?
Man, we are so excited to have you back on the sidelines in this league in Manhattan. So take us inside of how it all went down. You know, how did you find out that Chris Klieman was stepping down? And who called you first? Was it Coach Klieman or was it Gene Taylor, K-State AD?
I mean, it was early that week, right after our last regular season game, and very out of the blue, very unexpected. Coach Klieman was the one that reached out to me first, and a pretty special phone call as kind of the reality of what was going to transpire. And the possibilities therein kind of unfolded. And literally in a matter of hours, you're kind of in as a coach and even, when I was a player, you're kind of just such in a next step, next thing mindset. It's kind of, and these things happen out of the blue in a matter of hours. And so hadn't even as it unfolded was very, very surreal and just very, very grateful how it all worked out.
Yeah, and surreal is a great word because I'm sure it was for you, but I know it was for K-State fans as well. I think the big story with K-State football the last couple of years has been, Avery Johnson and can he reach his potential? Your history at K-State as an offensive play caller and then, of course, at A&M speaks to your ability to develop quarterbacks. What do you see in Avery and how do you get the best out of him?
Well, I think Avery's an elite competitor. I think that made us click pretty much right off the bat. I think his passion for the game, his football IQ, I think a lot of times that probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves, just because he is so talented. So I think that has always been a fit. I think being able to come in and have a foundation to work from that. He's not learning from complete scratch. We're able to build off of a large part of the foundation that was here before with our history. I think gives us a chance for a really, really good head start. And again, I think just our ability to package things for him, get on the same page and think the same way, and then allow him to be able to cut it loose and play fast and let that competitive nature loose is something that I'm really excited about. Have watched him obviously from a distance the last couple of years, and proud of how he's handled things, and really excited for to be able to be back on the same sideline for sure.
Well, you've worn the K-State jersey. Now you're wearing the K-State headset again, but this time it's your team, it's your program. So, in terms of identity, what is Kansas State football under Collin Klein?
Well, I think we're going to be a very blue-collar outfit. I mean, we're going to work extremely hard. We're going to have a very, very high level of preparation. We're going to be a disciplined, tough, physical ball club. And I think I've kind of said it a couple times, but I think it encapsulates well of just we're going to be the new old school. And from a conditioning work winter program, summer program, fall camp, we're going to embody the values that have made this place very, very successful for a very, very long time.
Yeah, what was it you said? Some people want to visit physicality. We live there.
Yep, I think that sums it up.
Well, and it's so interesting because I love the new old school too, because that is right now where football is. I mean, we had a stretch of spread and even defensively with rush 3, drop 8, and now I mean you look at the last two Super Bowl champs. Those were lunch pail, defensive oriented, run first teams. I think there's a lot to say about Indiana and Ohio State the last couple of years too in terms of that. So it's football. We always hear football is cyclical, but it does feel like it's returning to more downhill running, power football, defend, and it feels like that's where you guys are.
Well, I think you go back a long, long time. I think it's still a fundamental game. It's still a developmental game. There's a big difference between a hardened, trained 22-year-old and an 18-year-old coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And when you are able to fundamentally block better and stay on blocks more than your opponent, and when you are fundamentally able to destroy blocks and tackle, those two things, doesn't matter what style, doesn't matter how you package it, you do those two things, I think you have a chance to win a lot of football games. We've been very, very balanced. We've been very, very explosive on offense. I think we're going to be very, very multiple on defense while being very fundamentally sound. And I think those things travel across leagues, and I think those win you games in that second half of the season and get you where you want to be.
Coach, we just wrapped up a series, Names to Know, where we were ranking our top 5 impact transfers at each position in the Big 12, and K-State was all over the board. I think our main takeaway was that K-State brought in some serious dudes. So take us through your transfer portal process and kind of what you were looking for, and then some names that fans can be excited about.
Yeah. No, I think whenever you're in a transition year, those first 60 days are an absolute whirlwind, because and we were probably more stable than some of the teams in the Big 12. Credit Coach Klein, credit our culture, credit our players from that standpoint, right? There was teams that had to replace a heck of a lot more than we did. But I think from a big picture standpoint is we're going to be football guys. We're going to have that blue collar nature. We're looking for guys that are very, very good fundamentally, that compete and that shows on tape how hard they play. You can tell that there's going to be some, position flex, cerebral guys that we want to use in a lot of different ways, offensively, defensively, so that I think there's a football IQ component to that we try to evaluate in a very, very short time that kind of fits the profile of who we're looking for and what we're looking for. I think I'll start with the offensive line that we have. I think we did very, very well there. Obviously, we returned one guy with starting experience. So really, really excited about the guys we were able to bring in that room to build and create that kind of depth. I think you look at the defensive front and defensive line. I think we were able to bring in 3D tackles that are going to be able to compete and give us good depth. I think the guys on the edge with Wendell Gregory and Elijah Hill, I think those guys are going to have a chance to be able to have an impact. I think at wide out, being able to retain Deron Tibbs, I think was huge for us. You look at his production and what he was able to do through the course of last season with his size, with his measurables, I think was really elite. Being able to maintain and retain Garrett Oakley and Joe Jackson, some of those other producers on offense, I think was really, really huge. Avery being one of those pieces that we've talked about. And then again, on the defensive perimeter, you look at being able to keep Zayshawn Rich and Donovan McIntosh and being able to keep a lot of those guys in the secondary, I think was a good thing. Have a lot of good young players too, and when I say being a developmental program, I think we are going to be able to develop talent here very, very well, which I'm really excited about. So a little bit hard too, because I think I'll be able to have a much better feel after spring when we get on the grass and see how a lot of these pieces fit together. But really, really excited of how hard they've worked, how they bought into to the methodology and what we've presented them, in these first couple weeks, and excited to get to work with them in the spring.
I'm always curious, like, do these cats know, and I'm talking about your players now and your players at A&M, like, do they know who you are? Like, do they know you're one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the conference, how cold-blooded you were on the field? Like, do they know?
I think some of them do for sure. Probably more here even than at A&M. But then, I don't. Once word kind of gets around and people talk about it or whatever, there's some YouTube videos that get thrown around and this and that. So it's I'm pretty quiet about it because this is about them. It's about them. It's about this team and the program, and ultimately me being able to serve and help lead them and put them in as good a position for them to be successful. That's what matters.
Man, Ari's first film study, if he had your game, would just totally be nothing but YouTube videos of himself. So, love the approach. A little bit different than the way he'd go. All right, what's one thing?
Coach, I thought we were going to watch ourselves. No, you're going to watch me for a little bit. Watch this outside.
Oh, shoot.
All right, what's one thing from Bill Snyder that you refuse to change? No matter how modern the sport gets, what are some of the biggest things that you took away from Coach Snyder?
I think probably just from a discipline and accountability standpoint, making sure that everybody in our program is held to the same standard, that standard is very, very consistent and applied through every level of the program, and that ultimately I think that servant leadership model is critical through that, to where we're going to be extremely demanding on them. We're going to be very detailed in those expectations, but at the same time, like myself and every one of our staff and coaches, we're there to love on these players and to serve them and help make them the best that they can possibly be. And I think that for sure was exemplified year over year over year with Coach Snyder.
How is Coach Snyder doing?
You know what? He's good. I think I'm going to see him. There's a former player foundation event on Saturday that I think he'll be at, and we'll be able to spend some time together there for a little bit. So really excited about that.
What about handwritten thank you notes?
Very much still in play. We're gonna again. It's the personal touch that was he was absolutely incredible at. I think I probably use email a little bit more, than he did. I'm good with that, but there's definitely a level of personal touch that we're going to carry on.
Oh, man, that's awesome. All right, Coach, I know it's so early and we're just going into spring, but if there were one or two things where you're like, we've got to do this really well to have a really successful season year one, what would it be?
I think block, tackle, and finish. And I think if we, again, fundamentally improve how we block, how we tackle, and then get our motor ramped up for how hard we play collectively on both sides of the football. I think that's if we walk out of those 15 practices with those three things, I think we got a chance to be pretty darn good.
Get your lunch pail and your hard hat, James. Let's go.
Awesome stuff. K-State coach Collin Klein, man, I can tell you that we are super excited to have you in this conference and have you in Manhattan, Kansas. Ari's devastated being a KU guy, but I'm super pumped.
I'm glad he's not playing quarterback. That's it. That's all that matters to
me. So we appreciate your time, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you for having me. You guys have a great day.
That is K-State coach Collin Klein here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, part of our spring football series as we touch on Kansas State today. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
in Kansas City is underway. West Virginia basketball. Two teams looking for the first points in this game. Provided by Jordan Harrison. Cook trying to get around Miles. Good feed to McCray. Rolls it in for two. Miles. Defended by Woodley. Miles down the lane. Count it and one. Harrison. For two. Jordan Harrison, as Christy talked about right at the top of the telecast.
She usually will take her defender off the bounce and back them down. But right now, and maybe this is going to be two for him. There you go.
Great feed by Miles as she finds Parker. Harrison. Count it. It's a three. Mountaineers dodge one there. TCU had multiple opportunities.
And right now, with this 9-point lead, West Virginia does not need to be in a hurry. They do not even need to look to shoot the shot until about 5 seconds to go.
Inside of 2 minutes to go, Wheeler on the drive. Big B, good shooter. Can't get it. Rebound, McAlusky.
TCU's got a foul.
They don't get anybody. Here's Shaw all alone for the layup. Cue Country Roads. For the first time in 9 years, West Virginia, Big 12 tournament champions.
Back here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, we just wrapped our Kansas State Wildcats spring football preview series as we highlight a different school each and every day. And now we head to the other part of the state to talk Kansas basketball with the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks. You can hear him on the Kansas Radio Network, Brian Haney. Brian, what's up, buddy?
Hey, James. Taman, great to be with you guys. Excited about March Madness. It's maybe not the most momentous heading into the madness as we've had in 23 years under Bill Self, but to be back on the 4-seed line is a big deal. And as you know, only once last season as a 7-seed, the only time Bill was not a top 4-seed or higher. So we're so stinking spoiled. And with him on the sidelines, anything could happen these next 3 weeks.
That's a really good point. So, Brian, you're super close to the team. You travel with the team. You have the inside scoop when it comes to Kansas basketball. When it comes to Darren Peterson, just can you enlighten us on your interactions with him, with his camp, the piece that comes out about the cramping issues. I talked to him at Media Days, thought he was a great kid. Just what's from your perspective, your thoughts on the whole Peterson situation?
Well, I think obviously when you get to the postseason and you're in open locker room mode, some of these questions start to get asked more. And you've seen the pieces that have come out, most notably from Shreyas at the Kansas City Star, and that's what you're alluding to, a full body cramping episode that happened that he called a very traumatic experience after some of the preseason conditioning days that they do. And that kind of set in motion what's been a year that nobody could have predicted. 11 missed games, other games where he would play for a half and then start to feel cramping coming on. And it is traumatic when you've had something that severe, I guess. So, they were very cautious with that. His camp, him, the coaching staff, our medical staff, all of the above. And so it was unlike anything Self had ever coached through in his 33 years overall as a head coach. And certainly, something for us on the broadcast that we were always mindful of could be a possibility. If something flares up, he might have to come out. So it's been unusual in that regard. But my impressions of Darren are the same as yours. We've not had a ton of interactions, just to be honest, in terms of media opportunities with him. But the day-to-day of being around the young man at practice, afterwards, on the team bus, at the airport, whatever, delightful young guy. Respected and loved by his teammates. the type of guy that, when he's walking into practice, whether you're his second leading scorer, Flory Bidunga, Trey White, Melvin Council type guy, or whether you're the kid refilling the Gatorade jug, he comes up to you and gives you a fist bump and lets you know he appreciates you. Always says hi. I watched him after senior day sign autographs for a lady in a wheelchair who had no idea who he was.
Wow.
Probably the only person in the field house that didn't know who Darren Peterson was, and yet he took the time and then had the patience and grace to explain to her who he was. I then popped in and added some context. He should be the number one pick in the draft, ma'am. And yet he was, just fine taking the time to do that and had no problem with the fact that she had no clue who he was. My point is, he is a superstar prospect that I think is very much misunderstood with what's been, tossed about by a lot of talking heads that aren't boots on the ground in Lawrence and haven't been around him to know what was going on or what the young man's like between the years and all that. He himself said in that open locker room Q&A that, he probably wishes he could have, describe what was going on more and done things a little bit differently in terms of the transparency and all that. But, in terms of the young man, I think he's a 10. Is he more introverted than extroverted when it comes to, a bounce around the room personality? Sure. And he's even described himself as a loner, which probably he wished he could have used a different word. But that's accurate. That's the word he chose. But is he a good kid that busts his tail to be out there for his teammates, that wants to win, that wants to play, that loves the game of basketball, that has enjoyed his time at Kansas, for everything but the cramping? 110% absolutely. And so my memories of him, hopefully the best are still yet to be made. But even if they aren't, I'll have nothing but good things to say about Darren Peterson, that's for sure.
Brian, I want to talk about the Jayhawks on the court because they've lost 3 out of their last 5 coming into this tournament. And the last time we saw them, they shot 25% from the field, including 8 for 42. That's 19% from the starters. How does this offense get turned around, and can we expect it to be turned around against California Baptist?
I was told there would be no questions about the second half in the quarterfinal, the semifinals.
That didn't happen.
I had just gotten done blocking that out of my memory. 0 for 17 to start the half, and Taman has to take it there. Taman, it's been a rough stretch run for us. There's no getting around that or running from that. We've not been a good offensive team for the last month or so. We've stubbed our toe against some teams we should have beaten, like Cincinnati at home, Arizona State on the road. Now, there were some extenuating circumstances in that Arizona State game with the Hall of Famer getting tossed with 6 minutes to go in the first half. But point is, we've not looked like the typical Kansas down the stretch of the season. And early in the year, folks would say we didn't look like typical Kansas because we were dealing with the personnel availability issues of will Darren play or won't he? And so, you had kind of an understanding as to why it looked a little bit disjointed at times. Then they figured out how to play together without him. Then he reemerged, and now you're trying to learn how to play with him. And I'll tell you this much. I know we closed poorly, so Bill was not in much consideration for the Coach of the Year type honors. But until that stumble down the stretch, James and Taman, I would have told you, all biases aside, you can see my office wall behind me here. I'm pretty crimson and blue. I would have told you that this is one of his best coaching jobs because he was coaching 2 separate teams. The identity of one without Darren Peterson that beat Arizona when Arizona was 23-0, and the identity of a team with him. And yet they were figuring out, okay, now he's back, but then there was a stretch of games where he was only playing barely 20 minutes, if that, and then the cramping would flare back up. And so the point is, we've, for an extended stretch, never been able to truly establish who we are and how we're going to play and all that. I've never seen on March the 18th a Kansas team still trying to push buttons, pull strings, and figure it out. James lived in the state of Kansas long enough to know that by mid-February, like clockwork every year, Kansas was rolling. And even if they had 6 new pieces, they were rounded into form and hitting on all cylinders heading down the stretch. So this has been unique and different. And Bill Self, even as late as March the 3rd, was saying, we need more time to practice together as a team. He's like, I'm not talking about games. I'm talking about having everybody out there together. And it was March the 3rd, and we're thinking, hey, are we going to pull this off or not? And so it's been unusual and unique in that regard. Having said that, could they still flip the switch and turn it on and suddenly be much better offensively and much more connected offensively and get the type of defensive effort that has always, been the pillar and staple of most of Bill's best teams? Absolutely they can. Is Darren the type of player you could climb on the back of and go a couple rounds further because he's a Herculean talent? And as we know, great guard play in this format is a great recipe to success. Absolutely he is, and we can. So I think Kansas right now is looking at a new lease on life, flush the results of Kansas City, be mindful of it, but know that some of those shooting inefficiency numbers had to do with a little bit of a tired team, most notably Melvin Council, who was 1 of 14 in that game and had been playing 40 minutes a game or close to it. And so he's got his legs back underneath him. They've had 3 days of practice since that they feel really good about. And we'll let come what may. It's not lost on me, fellas, that we haven't made the second weekend since the championship team. I get it. And for me, that's the immediate goal for this club. Beat Cal Baptist on Friday, and whether it's UNI or St. John's with former Jayhawk Zuby Ejiofor on Sunday, find a way to get to the second weekend. And then if we do, then, man, as a college basketball fan, I hope Duke is still standing and didn't get knocked off, because we almost beat them the first time without Darren Peterson at the Champions Classic, all right? So we'd love to get a crack at them. They're obviously dealing with some injuries of their own, and that would be a possibility. But that's further down the line than we probably should speak today, because, as I said, we haven't made it out of the first weekend since 2022. That's goal number one. But before folks harp on that stat too much, and before I pass it back to James, understand that Bill Self had the first of his health issues heading into the 2023 tournament and was not coaching, on the sideline for that. Then you lost Kevin McCullough literally as you're flying to Utah in the 2024 tournament, an NBA draft pick and the leading scorer on that team. Last year, they're in position to beat Arkansas. KJ Adams, with 3 minutes to go, tears his Achilles, and the entire game flips. So it's not as cut and dry as saying, Kansas hasn't been a second weekend team the last 3 years. There have been some reasons why. But I think 2 of those 3 teams you would not have believed were going to go very far anyway. That's the difference. This is a team where anything can happen, Taman. We could lose Friday, or we could cut down nets on a Monday night in April, or something in between. And I'm not sure I can recall a Kansas season that quite compares to that, at least not since Danny and the Miracles in 1988. But Taman probably wasn't alive. I'm not sure his parents had met back then. So we won't take it that far deep.
Those are really good points, Brian, especially the injury stuff, because I think that gets overlooked a lot when you talk about teams in this tournament. Let's talk about KU's pocket. Okay, Cal Baptist first. The Lancers went 25-8. They've got this kid, Dominique Daniels Jr., who I'm seeing all over my Twitter timeline, the WAC Player of the Year. He's only about 5'10", scoring 23 points per game. But I also want to remind people that Cal Baptist played one Quad 1 game this season, and it was a 31-point loss to BYU. So what are your thoughts on the Lancers?
Yeah, great point. I think they're 0-3 versus Power 4 schools. So mindful certainly of Daniels, and I see the same feed on my Twitter algorithm of how dangerous this kid is. And he's got a little bit of Frank Mason in him, the way he aggressively drives through the lane and does these up and under dipsy-do shots amidst like 6 arms trying to stop him. So maybe he's a small college Frank Mason type. I don't know. But either way, we just got done talking about how great guard play can carry you this time of year. And sometimes Cinderella has a 60 or has a 36-point performance from one guy, right? And maybe that's what he's about to try to do. But they've also got other talent on this team that we're mindful of. I'd like to think at the end of the day, if we return to playing the type of defense that Bill Self thinks Kansas can play. And if you look at field goal percentage defense and block shots, we're one of the best defenses in America. But, at times there have been some lapses. And when the offense goes into an extended funk, like it has been for the better part of the last month, then you really do have to win with defense. And I think Bill Self sensed that early in the year. If we're putting our cards on the table, they spent a lot of money on some sharpshooters that have not been sharp. And, the return on the investment maybe hasn't been what you thought. And so, believe me, if Grady Dick was walking through that door right now, we'd all be a lot more bullish about our chances because we'd have a bona fide 4-3 a game type guy. Now, Darren could be that. But there have been some games where he does his scoring all in the mid-range and blow-bys and hits very few threes. Other times we've seen him hit 6 threes and a half at Louisville back in the preseason. We need some of that. But I think what I'm getting at is with our defensive keys, I think Bill realized early in the year that some of these wing players were not, cashing in on what they thought they might be. And therefore, as most of Self's great teams have, we needed to win first by making other teams play bad. And it sounds so elementary, make other teams play bad. But I'm telling you, man, it's the name of the game. And when they play with their, intensity level turned up and their hair on fire and they're forcing other teams out of their comfort zone, that's where you see Kansas really thrive. Then, we can turn defense into offense with a guy like Melvin Council who goes from 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds, like the Ferrari that James drives now that he's on this show. And I'm telling you, man, this is a team that will thrive if they start on the defensive end. Flory Bidunga, one of the best block shot artists in the league. I think he is probably one of the top 2 defenders in America and is a finalist for the National Defensive Player of the Year. So let's see if we can get it done on that end of the floor on Friday, and let's see how it spills over to Sunday, particularly if it's St. John's. They start 3 bigs along that front line, one of which is Zuby. Flory is not the most physical of big men. He has to do it with hops and quicks and go around you and over you and all that. That's where Bryson Tiller has got to step up. And it obviously made the headlines that he was benched the entire second half in our game the other night on Friday. And, disappointing, obviously, to not see him play a lick versus Houston in the second half. Coach Self's been challenging him to play to his size, be stronger with the ball, that kind of thing. This is his chance with a full week to think about it and work on it to respond. And we will not advance to Washington, D.C. if we don't get more out of that position and we have to go through St. John's. I think St. John's offensively is not nearly as gifted as a lot of the teams we've faced in the upper tier of the Big 12. But, man, they can muddy it up, and they've got big bodies on the back line, and that would be a tough matchup if we don't get optimal Tiller, should that be the case on Sunday. We can talk UNI too, but I know we're running low on time, and you're probably going to bring up when Ali Farouk-Manesh hit all those threes against us from a UNI perspective.
I wouldn't do that.
What was it, a decade and a half ago now? But yeah, we're mindful of what they could bring as well. Coach Jacobson does a great job, and that would be certainly a challenging opponent too. So that's our pocket. We're 2-1 all time in San Diego. We're excited to head west. One of our greatest NCAA tournament memories ever was 2003 in Anaheim when Heinrich and obviously Nick Collison and some of these guys went in to a brutal gauntlet of a West region and beat the likes of Arizona and Duke and got to go all the way to the title game.
Awesome stuff, Brian. Awesome stuff, man. It's so great to see you and talk to you and appreciate the breakdown. Safe travels out to San Diego. Enjoy the weather, and hopefully you get to get out and enjoy it a little bit.
Thank you, brother. We're looking forward to it, my friend. Business trip, but if we win on Friday, we might have to find a little bit of fun on Saturday. Rock Chalk, thanks again, fellas, and appreciate your coverage throughout the year.
Thanks, Brian.
See you, Brian.
Thank you.
Brian Haney, he is the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, joining us here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are brought to you by Modelo. Coming up next, we'll transition into the third hour chatting with Corey Williams, played at Arizona on that Final Four team from the early 90s, and then we also have Fran Fraschilla later on the program. He's Taman, I'm James. This is Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios. Look at
in Kansas City is underway. West Virginia basketball. Two teams looking for the first points in this game. Provided by Jordan Harrison. Cook trying to get around Miles. Good feed to McCray. Rolls it in for two. Miles, defended by Woodley. Miles down the lane. Count it, and one. Harrison for two. Jordan Harrison, as Christy talked about right at the top of the telecast.
She usually will take her defender off the bounce and back them down. But right now, and maybe this is going to be two for him. There you go.
Yeah, great feed by Miles as she finds Parker. Harrison. Count it to three. Mountaineers dodge one there. TCU had multiple opportunities.
And right now, with this 9-point lead, West Virginia does not need to be in a hurry. They do not even need to look to shoot the shot until about 5 seconds to go.
Inside of 2 minutes to go, Wheeler on the drive. Big B, good shooter. Can't get it. Rebound, Makaluski.
TCU's got a foul.
They don't get anybody. Here's Shaw all alone for the layup. Cue Country Roads. For the first time in 9 years, West Virginia, Big 12 tournament champions.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, where the Big 12 conversation never stops. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. We are brought to you by Modelo. Here exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios. We highlighted the Kansas State Wildcats today, part of our Modelo spring road trip touring Big 12 country. Talked with K-State football coach Collin Klein, and then we just got the insight from Brian Haney, the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks on the KU radio network. He'll be on the call for KU's opening round game against Cal Baptist. This is actually going to be our last live segment on today's program because I have a flight to catch, which takes off here in about 45 minutes. So Corey Williams will join us in 15, the ESPN college basketball analyst. We talked with him on Monday. The former Arizona guard played there from 92 to 96. And then Fran Fraschilla will break down all the Big 12 matchups for the NCAA tournament in segment 9, our ESPN college basketball analyst. But we want to get you in on the Big 12 today. Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Studios Bracket Challenge. It's super easy to do, super easy to play. All you do is go to ESPN's Tournament Challenge, search Big 12 Radio, and join our group. And the winner will get to come on the program. Last year it was James Faust, which I don't see James in the group yet. I know James is a loyal listener, so Mr. Faust, we need to see a bracket today. Because you're looking to defeat your crown and go back to back. But join the Big 12 Radio group on ESPN's Tournament Challenge. You get one entry, one bracket, and the winner gets to come on our program and brag a little bit. So ESPN actually gives you, as a user, if you have an account, 25 brackets that you can put anywhere, any groups, whatever. I've done 12 of the 25. Taman, where are you at? Have you filled out a bracket at all?
I filled out one.
You've filled out one?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have Arizona winning it all.
Okay.
I have another one that I'm filling out where I have Hofstra winning it all.
Okay. Hey, we were just talking during the break about Hofstra. They could make a run.
I'm totally in for it. I mean, Aiden Holloway is not playing for Alabama. That is going to be a huge void for the Crimson Tide. And if Hofstra beats Alabama, the winner of that Akron-Texas Tech game, and I think Texas Tech is still a phenomenal team. I love Grant McCaslin. I am concerned about their injury woes. Obviously, we know JT Toppin's hurt. And how healthy is Christian Anderson? I know he's playing, but what is his health status? We saw him get hurt in the Big 12 tournament, but hopefully he is okay. And I still think Texas Tech is the favorite regardless of that happens. But don't even sleep on Akron, too. They are a good team. If I'm not mistaken, they finished 25-8 They have a good squad over there in Akron. So
yeah, like I will say the thing about like MAC teams are always dangerous in the tournament, and then the CAA, the Coastal Athletic, that's a league that's usually pretty feisty in the tournament. I mean, Hofstra won. I didn't realize Hofstra was in this league. UNC Wilmington is in the CAA. College of Charleston, who went 14-4 in the league, they're actually coached by Chris Mack. That's his name. The coach that was at Xavier, had a bunch of success. Then he went to Louisville. Then they had a scandal. He got let go. He's revived his career at College of Charleston. Monmouth is in this league. Drexel, William and Mary, Towson. Like there's some pretty legit teams in that conference. And Hofstra's intriguing because they actually have some wins over some power conference schools. Like they beat Syracuse in the non-conference. Who else did they beat? Was it Pitt?
Yes, they won that game in Pittsburgh.
They won at Pitt.
Yes.
Cruz Davis is their leading scorer. He averages over 20 points per game. Preston Edmeade is their second leading scorer. A couple of guards.
Sensation, Preston Edmeade.
Yeah, 16 points per. Like, they're very guard heavy. They've got some length on the perimeter. They go 6'6" and 6'7". Man, your Hofstra team.
6'7".
Please do. They've got a 7-footer in the middle. Like, I'm reading about this Hofstra team. They go 7 feet and 6'10" on their front line. Both guys aren't really scorers, but they average around 7 rebounds per game. I might be editing a bracket later today.
See, he's on board. He's looking into Hofstra. He's on board. I just have this to say as a Hofstra alum: Roll Pride. It's Roll Pride versus Roll Tide.
So I told you I've got a bunch of different themes for all my brackets, and I've been using AI as well. I had so I fed Claude, my AI go-to source, a bunch of different articles ranking all of like the top 200 NBA prospects. And I said, make all my picks based off of who has more NBA talent on their team. And I've done that year over year. And usually that's the bracket that ends up doing the best. Like, ultimately, this tournament comes down to who has the best players. Shocking.
What a thought.
But it shouldn't be.
Personally, I just want to say this. I hope Anthony wins. Not a shot at me or you or Ari. I want Anthony to win because I want Anthony to be a guest host on this show.
Oh,
I think it'll be great. Anthony, you have my vote of confidence.
We could do a role reversal. By the way, my NBA talent bracket. Okay, so these are the 4 best teams according to NBA talent in each region: Duke, Houston, Arizona, and Iowa State. Iowa State actually comes out of the Midwest region with the most NBA prospects. And I didn't realize, like, Jefferson's supposed to be a top 20 pick. And then Momcilovic is a guy who's probably going to get drafted. Even Killian Torre, later in his career, could be an NBA player. So those were 3 guys that I noted. What were you telling me during the break about, like, you used to run a bracket pool? I know that all this is like gambling, but it's not really gambling, especially ours, because we're not there's really nothing at stake other than you get to come on and chop it up with us goofballs.
Yeah, so when I was 12, when I was in middle school, I was handing out brackets, like we do now as adults. And the thing is, I was charging kids to do it, and I'd be like, the winner gets the whole pool, and it was based on a point system. And come to find out, the teachers and administration found out about it, and they called my mom, and they were like, he's doing a gambling ring involving March Madness at school. And so my mom was like a little eerie because the school was talking to me, my assistant principal, and she was like, well, where did you find the idea? And I was like, well, they did it at my mom's job, so I thought it'd be cool to do here. And so then they called my mom, and my mom couldn't say anything, so I actually didn't get in trouble because I was a kid seeing what my parents were doing, my mother in this case. And my mom, the thing is, my mom wasn't a big sports person, so she just saw the people doing it at her job, and she was like, okay, whatever. And I was, invested in it, being around 12 years old. And so I just thought it was okay to do at school. And I almost got suspended for it.
That's amazing. So you weren't skimming, you weren't taking anything off the top T-chains at 12 years old. You weren't pocketing a little bit of the pool?
Totally was. I was 12. Okay.
You're a smart man.
Yeah, it totally was. Sorry,
Absolutely.
kids. Confession.
There you go. That's awesome. One more little nugget I'm going to drop before we head to a break, and my Uber is going to be here like any minute. In NCAA tournament history, teams from mid-major conferences that have won 30 or more games are 22-10 in the opening round, and there's never been a season in which a 30-plus mid-major team won or appeared in the tournament, and none of them won a game. Right? So years when you have multiple teams that have 30 wins from mid-major conferences, at least one of those guys has won a first-round game. And this year, that's Miami, Ohio, an 11 seed. They're 31-1. And High Point, the 12 seed, they are 30-4, and they play Wisconsin.
Huh. Okay.
There's your sleepers.
Okay. On board.
There's your sleepers, T-Chains.
On board.
All right, can we go to a timeout? Can we take a break?
We totally can take a timeout.
We're doing it.
We can go talk to Corey Williams and Fran Fraschilla.
All right, Corey Williams is coming up next, the Arizona guard. Played at Arizona from 92 to 96, and now he's an ESPN analyst. He'll give us his take on the Arizona Wildcats. Then we'll wrap up the show with Fran Fraschilla. We'll be back live tomorrow in studio. Me and you, Taman. Ari will be remote,
correct.
But the three of us will be back tomorrow from 8A to 11A Eastern Time. Corey Williams is coming up next here on Big 12 Today. We are brought to you by Modelo, heard exclusively on TuneIn, and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble, and they've gone cold. Miller driving. Dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up, and he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Back here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, brought to you, the full-time fan, by Modelo. Exclusively on TuneIn, you're watching us on the Big 12 Fast Channel, Big 12 Studios, alongside Artie Timken. I'm James Westling, and we welcome in one of my favorite guys to work with, Corey Williams, ESPN college basketball analyst, former Arizona Wildcat guard, still super connected to the program, played at Arizona from 92 to 96. Corey, what's up, man?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Man, we are good. We took in the Big 12 tournament from KC. We were doing our show live up there and talked with Tommy Lloyd and basically like 6 Arizona players I think we had at some point throughout the course of the week. And your Wildcats looked really good. So can you put into perspective what this run meant for Arizona?
I think for Arizona, there were a lot of question marks from the fan base. Joining the Big 12, where do we fit in? Pac-12 in its heyday was a super good conference. There was lots of NBA guys coming out of that conference, tremendously competitive. We sent some years 5-6 teams to the tournament, but the Big 12 was a different animal. There were a lot of people talking about how it was more physical than the West Coast basketball had been and how there were some powerhouse teams that Arizona would have to eventually chase and hunt down. A lot of people felt like Arizona would get bullied the first couple of years in the Big 12. So from a psychological standpoint, to win the league and then win the tournament, I know the Arizona fan base is extremely proud and excited, and they got their chest out, and they're all over social media right now. So for the fans, it was huge. I think for the program and Tommy Lloyd, it was huge as well because Tommy Lloyd's been official. He's been an official top coach in the country for years. But the win in the tournament, beating Houston twice, it just really double stamped it. He's one of the elite coaches in college basketball. So I was really proud for Tommy, very humble guy. Came into a program with huge shoes to fill behind, with the work Sean Miller did, and obviously legendary coach Lute Olson. When you come to Arizona, it's just like, those other blue blood jobs. The expectation is a national championship, and Tommy's embraced that. So I was really happy for him. More importantly, because I know him personally, and he's a very humble guy. Really connects to his kids, really has embraced Tucson. And I think for Arizona to get into a league that's probably the best it's ever been in I don't know how many years, and to win it all with, obviously 8 teams going to the tournament, I think it was a good sign for the program too.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of wins heading into the tournament, this is the most ever for Arizona. I mean, is that surprising for a program that's won a national championship?
It is a little bit. I'm a realist. I don't count non-conference at all for anybody. So when you're playing, North Dakota State and all these other teams, it's kind of like, okay, you're racking up wins. A lot of coaches want to get to 10, 11, 12 wins by December because everybody knows conference play is brutal. So when you look at the final, had somebody told me Arizona's only going to lose 2 games, I'd have said, yeah, you're crazy. There's no way they go through the Big 12 and only lose 2 games. But that's what they did. So that is extremely impressive. I'm not really caught up on the total. I'm looking at the 2 games they lost, and there's not a team in the country that can say they probably should have won those games. So no shame in the 2 losses. Incredibly impressed in some of the gutsy wins that they pulled out. There's a lot of stuff I didn't have on my bingo card. Arizona winning at Houston without Koa Pete. Nah, there's no way I was calling that. Arizona at Kansas. Wasn't surprised. Felt like they could have beat Kansas had they not had the severe foul trouble. But, hats off to Kansas. And then, losing at home with losing Koa Pete in the second half, JT Toppin goes berserk at Texas Tech, player of the year in the conference. No shame in that loss either. So overall, am I surprised? Absolutely. There's no way I thought Arizona would sit there at 32-2 this time in March. Absolutely did not have that on my card at all.
Corey, with the season that Arizona's had, is there any pressure on Arizona in this NCAA tournament? I mean, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about, what was it, 2024, when Arizona had basically, their region in their backyard and got upset by Clemson in the Sweet 16. Like, is it Final Four or bust? Where do the fans sit on that aspect of it?
I think it's interesting you asked that question because the Arizona fan has PTSD. We have so many tragic tournament losses in our memory. And you're talking about a fan base that's 40, 50, in some instances, 60 years old. We've got fans that have been coming to the game since the 70s. It's crazy. So you've got these fans who have seen every imaginable kind of Arizona loss in the tournament. I myself got bounced in the first round twice. So I have my own sets of psychological issues with teams. So the fan base is on edge because we know how fragile and finicky the tournament can be. Nothing's a guarantee. We've sent dozens and dozens of players to the NBA, yet we've only had one national championship. That in itself is proof of what the tournament, what kind of animal the tournament is. So the fans are probably knowing this is a team um, that can get to the Final Four. I would say that there's not any hope. Arizona's proven already, just in how difficult the Big 12 is, that they are the favorite of the first 4 games of the NCAA tournament. I think this Arizona team can win the first 3 for sure. I think that 4th game is going to be one just like the Houston game, just like a Kansas game, just like a Texas Tech or an Iowa State. It's going to be a good game for Arizona, but they've already proven that they can win, which brings me to my second point. The team itself, absolutely no pressure. I've never seen a team like this before, and now I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about their mind state. They don't care. They don't get nervous. They don't get rattled. They like playing with each other. The open man is the guy who shoots the ball. They actually love the pushing and the shoving and the gritty game. They don't mind being on the road and taking a 10-point run. They don't look around for anybody to save them. I've never seen a group of kids this locked in on the basement level where they love it when it gets gritty. They call themselves the gritty boys. They don't mind a fist fight. We've had talented teams before, but I don't know that we've ever had a team that is like so blue collar, where you get 7 or 8 different leading scorers throughout the season. You've got 6 or 7 players that can give you 20. It's a very strange, rare team. So I know what's going on inside that huddle, what's going on inside that locker room. They don't feel any pressure. They've already been through hell in a sense. I mean, you play at Kansas, you play Texas Tech, you play Iowa State, you play the games that they've played, UConn, Florida. You've done all that. That similar situation is about to happen again. They're one of the few teams, there's probably about half a dozen teams in the tournament that have been through the toughness of the tournament already in the regular season. The rest of the tournament, it's new territory for them.
One of the big stats, and I know we'll hear this before the tournament starts, is no team has won a national championship west of the Mississippi since Arizona did it in the 90s. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think, UCLA won it the year after I left, but yeah, Arizona was probably the most recent. I don't know. I honestly, it's a finicky thing. I think anytime we as analysts can sit back and look at a bunch of stats, we can grab something and make a headline out of it. It's like, yo, did you know that? Have there been great teams? Absolutely. I will say this. There was a time in the Pac-12 where between all the pros that Romar had at Washington, UCLA, Arizona, I mean, guys were leaving after their freshman and sophomore year, and these programs had to reload. There was a time where the Pac-12 itself was pretty much sponsoring the NBA first round. And during that 3 or 4 year run, had any of those teams had any layover or rollover, they were national champions. But guys were leaving so quick out of the Pac-12 that none of those programs had a chance to make a deep run. I'm talking about lots of pros back to back to back to back. So I think your stat is interesting. I think it's a little timing. I think it's a little bit of luck. It's interesting. I don't think it's a commentary on the style of play, because I think, West Coast basketball, so to speak, is different. Guys move the ball and tend to shoot a little more, whereas as the further you move east, the game kind of revolves around the interior players more. And I don't know that that's the same anymore, because all these kids across the country play in the same AAU circuits, and now all these coaches are running dribble handoff offenses. So maybe that'll change this year.
Interesting.
Talking with Corey Williams. He played at Arizona, currently an analyst for ESPN's live college basketball coverage. Corey, when you look at Arizona in the West, who's a team in their region that it could be a little bit scary? Like, I'm looking at maybe Arkansas or Wisconsin or Gonzaga or Purdue. Like you said, those first three, you think they'll be okay. Who concerns you in their region?
Well, you named some really good teams. Purdue is an inside-out team. I think that could be a very physical game. I'll say this, and I'm just being honest. I'm not concerned with guard-led teams against Arizona.
Okay.
Arizona's played against some of the best guards in the country in the Big 12. So if your guard is your leading scorer and you're looking for your guard to beat Arizona in the tournament, yeah, good luck. That's not going to happen. But if you got bigs and you can get Arizona in foul trouble in their 8-man rotation, you have a chance. I mean, you saw the game against Houston. Arizona had foul trouble. They had a 13-point lead. It disappeared so fast in a few minutes because they are a team that only plays 8. I mean, on occasion, if they have to break the glass in a case of emergency and play 9, they will, but they only play 8. But they're 8 really good players. The Zags are a handful. Graham Ike is probably one of the best big men in the country. That would be a really tough matchup for, Koa Pete, Previs, Awaka. They would have to deal with a guy who's probably he's definitely an NBA player. I don't know where they got him going in the draft, but Graham Ike is a monster. Purdue is good, but Purdue's shown weaknesses. You can speed them up. You can get them uncomfortable. Arkansas, you never know. I mean, Cal he's such a good coach, and the freshman point guard sensational, but I don't think they pose that much of a threat. Wisconsin, if you get sucked into a half court game with them, yeah, they can hang around. I don't see them as a real threat, but in that whole bracket, I would be most concerned with the Zags, to be honest with you. They're a complete team. Mark Few's a hell of a coach, and a Mark Few Tommy Lloyd showdown would be must see television. I mean, you don't have to rate any promos for that. America's going to tune in for that game.
That's a really good point. Corey Williams played at Arizona, breaking down the Arizona Wildcats here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios. Corey, great to hear from you, and we'll catch up again soon.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
All right, man.
Arizona won it by 7. Just under a month ago, we are underway with a trophy on the line here tonight. And he'd love to add another one here in this game.
And Arizona would like to get Braden Burries going early.
He'll pick up an assist as Bradley knocks down a 3.
Really good.
13th in the AP poll in the week before the season began, as Pete lays it in, but they were in the top 5. Into Pete, who's had a terrific night. Left hand up and good.
Gave a look to the high-low, the dump down, and then pivoted. And especially the big guys stepping up in screening situations has been really effective for Arizona.
Some room for Sharp. A big shot for the Cougars. Fleming's on the bench right now. Miller out there for the backcourt with Uzan and Sharp. Tugler tries again and one.
Beautiful pocket pass.
10-0 run, Houston. Arizona's got foul trouble and they've gone cold. Miller driving, dumps it off. Laid in by Tugler. Shot clock at 7. Burries. He's going to have to put a shot up. And he banks it home. Back comes Flemings. Uzan. Hit it! And it's a 3-point game. That will do it. The regular season champs are the tournament champs here in Kansas City.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo, and in studio with me now is Sydney Staples, who I co-host Across the Conference with, which you can catch on Big 12 Studios. Sydney, how are you? Love your sweatshirt, by the way.
Oh, wow. Isn't it kind of cute that we're twinning? This is kind of a moment. I love this for us. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
It's actually Happy St. Patrick's Day.
No.
You know that.
Is it actually today?
Yeah.
You know, my mom FaceTimed me this weekend, and she goes, hey, did you see this thing? That Chicago dyes their river green?
Yes, every year.
And I go, Mom, every year I see this. She goes, no way. Wait, really? Yes, Mother, I've seen this all over. So this is something coming. I think she knew. It's just she doesn't have social media, so she doesn't know.
Yeah. No, of course not. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's St. Patrick's Day today, but everybody celebrates it on the weekends because why would you want to celebrate on Tuesday?
I want to celebrate it every day.
Yeah. Every day is St. Patrick's Day in Sydney's house.
Do you like Shamrock Shakes from McDonald's?
No.
Ooh, okay.
You?
Well, yeah. I mean, is it my favorite? No, but do I drink it? Yeah. To be
Super
festive.
Funny. Your feet don't even touch the ground. It's like you're like a little kid sitting at the table.
This is the depth of this chair. It's too deep. It doesn't work for me.
We need to get Sydney a new chair.
I'm just glad this is radio and no one can see this. So
let's keep. Well, they can see it. It is not just radio. Shreyas Ladd, our buddy from the Kansas City Stars, joining us now. Nobody has been more on top of the Darren Peterson saga throughout the entire season than Shreyas, and he's got two pieces back to back that really document a lot of it. Good morning, Shreyas. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Appreciate your time. All right, so after the Houston loss for Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, you got some really explosive quotes from Darren Peterson about the cramps dating back to post boot camp in September that led to him going to the hospital. And he said, through his own words, basically that had a dramatic impact on him. And we saw that play out throughout the course of the season. So let's start there, Shreyas. What did you take away from what he said post game to you?
Well, I was just happy he finally talked about it. I'd heard about it for months, and you hear about it from a few different sources. But for something like this, where it's health related, you want to hear it from the source itself. And, the biggest thing is the lack of transparency with Darren Peterson has been an issue for a lot of people, for media people, for fans, but also NBA scouts. I've had guys talking to me like, I would have loved to have just one conversation with my boss instead of 50 different conversations about why he is or isn't playing, So him getting out in front of it in Big 12 kind of helps him, I think, a lot of that, kind of what happened this season. He opened up. And man, I don't know. If I was a team drafting number one, I really want to see the medicals after he talked about like full body cramps that kept him in the hospital, that made him a little traumatized to play. It clearly has had an effect on him all season. The tape you see at Kansas doesn't look like the high school tape, as I've said in the story and a few different scouts had mentioned. Just a really interesting year for Darren Peterson and a really interesting year for Kansas.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I want to get into your piece that was released this morning, which digs deeper into this. But does Bill Self host that boot camp annually every September? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's been like a tradition for however long. I mean, it's been there way before I was on the beat, and I think it'll continue to be there. So, not the greatest news that he seemed to have just a really bad reaction to it about a week after it.
Yeah, I would imagine not common, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, guys like throw up and puke, but that's like just natural stuff that happens to the day-to-day stuff. It seems like this was so much more severe, and some level of like seriousness I'd heard from, about the coaching staff and his teammates being a little worried and stuff like that. And obviously, like, he got hospitalized. He had to take IVs, and he talked about having to change his diet and have to drink tonic water. It's just crazy to see, like, something that a lot of people did not know about, have such a deep impact on everything that happened this season.
All right, so now let's get to your latest article that was released this morning. I haven't had a chance to read it in full yet, but trying throughout the breaks to do so. The Darren Peterson story, how KU's dream recruit overcame season from hell. What's the main takeaway for you from this piece?
The main takeaway is there's a lot of stuff that happen behind the scenes that people don't know about with Darren Peterson. There's some level of nuance required that maybe he wasn't healthy, but also some level of like skepticism about some of the things that happened, like Bill Self calling him out and then his minutes increasing, even though, he says it's not because of that. There's a part in the story where I talk to a bunch of different scouts and get their viewpoints. A scout had pointed out to me, like, I would go to these Adidas events. I'd wake up at 7 a.m., go to it's in California, wake up go to 8 a.m. gym, and Darren Peterson with street clothes. Then I'd go to EYBL at 9 a.m., and at 10 a.m., AJ's playing every single game. So there's some level that I've heard of load management that happened to him in high school. I think, Ari, we've talked about this. There's an interesting relationship between him and his dad and his agent with it all. I alluded to it a little bit in the story. There is some belief from a lot of people in the NBA world that his camp is too involved in his decision making. And I can say this much. There are people in the camp that wanted a feature like this to come out for a long time, and there are people in the camp that did not want this to come out. And you can probably figure out who they are by reading that article. But it is really interesting to me, just kind of a crazy season that he's had. And honestly, he has a chance of redemption if he can take Kansas on a deep run. But it's hard to see that happening with everything that's gone on this season.
Yeah, well said. It would be kind of hoping and praying for something that we haven't seen as opposed to going off of the evidence of what we have seen already. If an NBA scout had the number one pick in the draft and asked you your assessment of this entire situation and kind of your viewpoint of it, and would you take him number one overall, what would you say?
I would say I need to see the medical records first. There's some level of like, I think a lot of what he said is true, but I think there's something deeper there. Like, is there something more than just full body cramps? And I'd want to talk to him about his mental state, his overall being of it all. I think, the one good thing about the NBA is the camp can have as much influence when the time comes, right? Especially when you're competing for the number one overall pick. I would say I understand why you take DeBonza over Peterson. But if you trust the high school tape and you trust that this is just a one-off situation, which I'm not going to make that judgment call for an NBA scout. They've been following him since 8th grade. Then I say, yeah, take Peterson. He's a good kid. He has good character. Like all this noise aside, I would take Peterson. But with all these questions and with how good of the fact that, DeBonza has been, it makes sense to take AJ over Peterson in my mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, hard to disagree with you. What was maybe the most damning quote that you got in this latest piece that came out?
Well, I think, there's a few. The one where a scout tells me, I've watched along throughout high school and it's night and day, the difference that he looks. That one was pretty bad. And then the one I had mentioned where the scout had talked about going to Adidas events and seeing Peterson in street clothes versus DeBonza's playing every single game. And I'd heard from multiple sources throughout this year that there was definitely some load management happening for Darren in high school. I don't know how much of it carried over, if at all, at Kansas, but I definitely think there's some level of being coddled, and this is his first time really facing adversity, and it's been a difficult year in a lot of ways for Darren. So, yeah, those are the two big ones, but he has a lot of great stuff in there talking about how, people were talking, wrong about him. He responded to the Stephen A thing. He responded to the memes about him, etc.
Yeah, it feels like, and again, I'm kind of been on the sidelines, whereas you've been, really charging through and talking to sources, but it feels like he's gotten bad advice, one, and then two, that basically every opportunity they've had, they've messed up on the PR front. Like, they have just PR mishandled this thing beyond anything.
It's been a disaster. All right. So many of these things, like we're talking about right now, if it had been revealed in, like, even December, not even like November or October or whatever, it would not have been as big a deal. But him opening up right before the NCAA tournament, which I appreciate because I wanted to write this story for 6 months now, I don't know how smart of an idea that was. Okay, it's a little bit of a distraction, honestly, for Kansas, because now the question is, okay, well, he says he's fully healthy, but he's looked pretty horrible on the court since he's pushed through every single game. Is he really healthy? I don't know. He can't shoot the ball well right now, and just it's been such a weird year that if his camp had opened up to literally anybody, I think it would have been a better outcome than we're getting right now.
Yeah. I mean, and yet it tracks that they wouldn't, because again, they probably have made every mistake every step of the way here. So it tracks, right? Like they continue to make PR mistakes. Like, of course, they're not going to get out in front of this and manage this properly.
Even in this story, it says I had reached out to his dad multiple times for interview, and he honestly a little bit led me on for months there. I probably called him, Ariane, you know this, probably 40 times. I went in person before the game to try and get him one last-ditch effort before the quarterfinals game. I'm sure there are people in this camp that are not happy with this story. And to me, I say, well, if they had done some interviews, this feature would not have been so focused on everything that's gone wrong instead of what's gone right for him or who he is.
Great point. Shreyas Laddha, Kansas City Star, great work, my friend. You killed it. Way to go.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Shreyas Laddha done a fantastic job covering the story all year. And, yeah, I mean, this is something that, though it was released this morning, Shreyas has been working on for the entire season. And finding sources and trying to get quotes. And, I mean, he literally showed up to T-Mobile Center hours in advance of the Kansas quarterfinal matchup just to try to get his dad to talk, as he'd been trying all year. They kept saying no or leading him on. Yeah, sure, we'll do it. Or I don't have time right now, but I'll do it later. They could have been in control of the narrative, and they let the narrative control them. And that, I mean, he goes to a major city in the NBA, and they're going to eat him alive. Like, you know, for guys that really want to dig into stories, to find, like, you talk about some of these markets, man, they like, that is, Lawrence is going to be a much nicer market to you than many of these other markets are going to be in the NBA. So, you know, it's not only just preparation for him as a player, but also the preparation for the family in terms of what they're going to be dealing with the NBA at the next level, especially if some of these things come to fruition. We shall see. Really interesting story. And again, I think so much of this then now depends on what happens next. How does he handle the NCAA tournament? How does Kansas handle the NCAA tournament? I'm not optimistic. I've got them losing to St. John's in the second round, but if they get out of the first weekend, I think that'd be a huge, you know, feather in the cap of Darren Peterson. Because if Kansas is to get out of the first weekend, it means Peterson played really well. All right, along with Sydney Staples, who's in today in this last hour, I am Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.